How's it going, everybody? I want to talk about Breath of the Wild a bit today. Now, let's not kid ourselves, this is one of the most well-received and highly acclaimed games ever. There's a lot of players and critics alike that consider it to be the best game of all time. Everyone and their mother recommended this game, saying that it was this masterpiece that everyone needed to play. And I played it, I beat the game, I did the Divine Beasts, climbed every tower, finished all the shrines that I came across, and completed all the side quests that I picked up along the way. And I hated it for the most part, so let's talk about it. Now, one quick disclaimer, I've never played any other Zelda games before, so take that how you will, but from what I've gathered, you don't need to be familiar with the series to understand the gist of the story, which I did. With that said, let's get in. Now let's start with the basics. What do you do in this game? Well, you walk. You walk, you walk, you walk, and then you walk some more. When you consider how my playthrough went, this game is a walking simulator disguised as an open world RPG. I don't think it would be an exaggeration if I said more than half of my entire playtime was spent walking around in empty fields. Keyword there, empty. Now there might be a lot of content in the game as a whole, I'm not denying that. But it's spread so thinly across the map that it just becomes pointless. This is my number one issue, my biggest issue with this game. There was this one section where I had to go to the next quest marker, and it was a main quest. I think it was the beginning of the 4th Divine Beast quest, if I'm not mistaken. And I kid you not, I had to do nothing but walk for 20 minutes straight. I didn't even check the time, it was probably more than that. And during that time, outside of fighting maybe one, maybe two groups of monsters, all I did was walk and climb. This is compounded by another feature in the game, horses. I got into the game knowing that you could ride horses, at least I remembered it that way. So I'm going through the game, and at some point I'm getting really bored of all the walking, so I wonder when I'm gonna unlock horses. So I look it up, and apparently it's in a place that I can already go to. There is absolutely no incentive to go to that empty piece of land, but if I go there, I can start using horses already. Horses in this game are so hidden and sparse that if I hadn't known about this and looked this up, I am pretty sure I would have gone through the entire game without even knowing of their existence. This is part of another huge issue with the game. The lack of useful information is embarrassing. We're gonna talk more about the lack of info and hints later on, so back to horses for now. So after having YouTube tell me how to play the game and set up the game itself, I tame a horse for the first time. I register it, give it a name, and start riding it and maneuvering it, petting it when it does the thing that I want it to do correctly, so that it becomes more obedient down the line. Another completely useless mechanic that only exists to complicate things and frustrate the player. But anyway, it's not too bad. So I'm finally riding the horse, and I'm like, okay, this is something fast. I can get to my destination swiftly now. I was galloping across this beautiful grassy landscape with the wind blowing, and for what was probably the first time in several hours, I was having a slight bit of fun. For about 5 minutes, until I realized that horses can't handle any sort of sudden elevation change, and there's lots of elevation changes in Breath of the Wild's terrain. There's this canyon that you go through that leads to this desert area, and at the end of the path, there's a set of stairs, and they slope with a tilt angle of like 10 degrees, and the horse just refuses to go down either of them. And I also realized that you can only summon them from stables that you have discovered, and they're only in a handful of locations in the whole map. Imagine if you could summon Roach, and a very unskillful Roach at that, from only a few places in the entire map of The Witcher 3. Can you imagine how much walking you would have to do as Geralt, and how boring the game would get? Well, that's exactly what's happening in Breath of the Wild. Another really big issue I have with this game is everything freaking breaks. This is an even bigger problem during much of the early game, as you're often left without the right tools for the job. You went off the beaten path and found this ore deposit? Perfect. Let me just use this hammer I found and... oh wait, it broke in 2 swings. It takes most of the joy out of finding new equipment. Oh cool, I found a powerful new sword. I can't wait to use it for like 2 fights. I found this fire sword, it can set fire to things. Finally, it's gonna open up new combat options and will be very useful next time I find an icy enemy, and it broke in 5 minutes. You start out this game so weak, but getting stronger never feels satisfying because I know the time the thing that made me stronger is gonna break is just around the corner. You get what's called the goddamn Master Sword, finally an unbreakable weapon. No, it breaks. It just regenerates in like 10 minutes. Have fun waiting. This is also compounded by the fact that you have such few inventory slots. Now this mainly affects weapons, but can definitely also affect bows and shields. You can only hold a handful of weapons at a time. And once you add in weapons that are used for certain tasks like torches and hammers, you are left with so little to work with. If you're gonna break everything I have, at least let me hold a lot of it. There's these things called Korok seeds. They're collectibles hidden throughout the map. Sometimes they're in obscure locations or hidden behind a puzzle or a challenge. And if you collect enough of them, you can trade them in for more inventory slots. Every time you increase an inventory slot, the next upgrade requires you to collect more seeds than the upgrade before. I was able to find around 10 to 15 of these Korok seeds throughout my adventure, so I was only able to upgrade my inventory a handful of times. There's apparently 900 of these things hidden throughout the map. You know, it would be really nice if you can obtain or buy an item that would show the locations of these seeds on our map, like location markers. You know, one of the most essential things in almost every open world video game out there. Yeah, that would be very useful. Which is exactly why this game doesn't have it, because this game doesn't do useful things. One of the biggest issues in the early game is just how weak Link is. Did From Software develop this game? I just started playing the game, why is everything one-shotting me? Like, seriously, a lot of the enemies will just one or two shot you in this game. When you complete 4 shrines, you get to choose between an extra bit of stamina or an extra heart. And I always went for more hearts, time after time after time, without increasing my stamina once, as I always felt like I needed to become more and more tanky. Some monsters in this game deal like 4 hearts of damage, so even when I got to the point where I had 5 extra hearts, I was getting 2-shotted by common mobs. What's the point of getting more health if I'm gonna get 2-shotted regardless? And it was never enough. Even when I finished the game, I never got to a point where I was 100% comfortable when I got to a difficult combat encounter. Difficulty options? Now, why would you add difficulty options to a game that has a heavy emphasis on combat? Now I'm really starting to think FromSoft made this game. Also, random side note, I really get weirded out by the enemy designs in this game. They're just really disturbing, I don't know. One of the biggest, arguably the biggest, selling points of an open world game is the exploration. And in this game, exploration is literally discouraged, especially in the early game, because of these 3 points that I mentioned so far. Why would I spend 10 minutes straight walking around in empty fields just to get to something that I'm gonna enjoy for like 3 minutes at most? And the enemies there are probably gonna 1 or 2 shot me out of nowhere, so that's not fun. And my good equipment is probably gonna not last the encounter, or has already stopped lasting, and all I have left are trash weapons, which are also probably going to break. And even through all that, if I complete whatever it is that I'm exploring, the equipment I'm gonna get as a reward is also gonna break in 5 minutes. What's the point? What's the point of this game? There are so few moments in this game where I was like, that thing in the distance looks really interesting, or this area on the map, I should go explore it. Most times I explored some place, it didn't feel like an exciting discovery, it just felt like a chore. Oh great, it's another shrine. So that's already the biggest aspect of the game just gone, lost all of its appeal. Next point. Yet another really big issue I have with this game is the frustratingly severe lack of information. It hardly ever lifts a finger to give you useful information. You know, there's this hint box that appears at the top right corner of the screen sometimes to show you how a move is done. It appears after you've already done the move. Like I didn't know how to shield surf, for example, right? Because the game never bothered to tell me. So I look up how to do it, and I do it for the first time. Sure enough, there it is, the hint box telling me how to do the move just after I've already done the move. You know, for the amount of world detail this game has, which I'm gonna touch upon later on, the lack of information is just embarrassing. They've built this remarkably detailed game, and the game just doesn't bother telling you about any of it. Just figure it out, I don't know. There's a surprisingly severe lack of hints as well. You know, for a lot of the side quests I picked up along the way, I had absolutely no idea what to do and or where to go. I looked up how to do probably over 3/4 of it. There was this one quest where you had to catch a specific fish in a specific part of a specific river on a specific part of the map at a specific time of day when it specifically rains? Yeah, good luck figuring out that one without a guide. In shrines as well, if you can't understand what the puzzle designer was trying to convey to you through the use of the environment, or if you just straight up can't figure the puzzle out, well, sorry. Tough luck, no spirit orb for you. Even on the Great Plateau, the place that's supposed to act as the tutorial, there was this one quest where I had to find some peppers and fish, and I had to look up that crap. But when the lack of hints is the most infuriating is when you're inside the 4 divine beasts. The puzzles in these areas are some of the most confusing crap I've ever seen. I looked up around, again, maybe 3/4 of the puzzles in here. Otherwise, I would have been stuck here for hours upon hours just blankly looking at my screen. Surely it wouldn't have been too hard to implement something where, like, if I was stuck on a certain puzzle for a certain amount of time, the hint box would appear to tell me to use this ability on this thing or activate this mechanism after this one. Don't give me the solution, but just give me something to at least point me in the right direction. During bosses as well, some of them have really obscure ways of defeating them, and you guessed it, the game doesn't bother to help you in any way, shape, or form. One of the biggest problems with the design of this game is just the sheer amount of mechanics that solely exist to frustrate and work against the player. Oh, there's a thunderstorm. Better unequip every piece of equipment you have on you that has metal on it, or you will literally get your ass one-shotted by Thor the God of Thunder. Don't have any good equipment that's not metal? Sorry buddy, looks like you're stuck with the wooden club. Oh, you need to climb somewhere but it's raining? Have fun literally sitting there for 5 minutes waiting for it to pass. Thunder, rain, weapons breaking, bows breaking, shields breaking, enemies disguised as treasure chests, enemies disguised as NPCs, too hot, too cold, too tired, too unobedient. Everything in this game exists to piss you off. None of these mechanics are fun. They don't add any enjoyment. Overcoming these challenges doesn't feel satisfying. They're just annoyances. It's like the lead designer asked his team, what can we include in this game to piss off the player? A guy answers with one of the mechanics in the game. The lead is like, perfect, find 10 more ideas like that. Oh, so we can choose to implement the most interesting and engaging one? No, we're gonna implement them all. Let's talk about the combat in this game. Now, I already talked about how everything loves to 1 or 2 shot you, but outside of that, the combat in this game is quite shallow. You know, I'm not expecting Devil May Cry, but considering how much combat there is in this game, I was expecting it to be a bit more deep. You know, you have your basic attack, spin attack, block, parry, dodge, and a flurry rush move, which is nice, and you can throw your weapon, I guess, if you want to. But other than that, there isn't much to it. Now, in terms of combat ideas, there's a lot of good stuff in there. You know, elemental stuff like fire being effective against ice, there's headshots, you have boomerangs, weapons designed for throwing. You can also throw magical bolts of ice with an ice rod, but 99% of the time you don't get to utilize most of that kind of stuff because either it's completely useless or, the more likely reason, you don't have that stuff on you. This brings me back to my point of nothing ever lasting in this game and you finding yourself without the right tools for the job, which is a shame because the combat outside of these cooler things, with the exception of the flurry rush move, is quite basic and uninteresting. What's also annoying is that you can't use your shield when you're using a two-handed weapon. Okay, don't use two-handed weapons then. The problem is, most good weapons you obtain in this game are two-handed, and you often feel the need for a shield because parrying is very crucial in some situations, and the combat often feels quite clunky. The direction of the attacks of the enemies sometimes feel wonky, inconsistent, or uncertain. The way they hit you doesn't always feel fair. So yeah, overall the combat left a lot to be desired for me. If I had to describe the music of this game with one word, it would be absolutely freaking horrendous.
That's 3 words!
Well, most of the time you don't even hear any music. Remember those long stretches of time where you did nothing but walk? Something that could have made those a little less unbearable is some music. But no, most of the time it's complete silence. The times you do hear music, it's mostly unmemorable or downright annoying. Every single time you get into a normal combat encounter, you hear this awful music. Music. This isn't music, this is just random annoying sounds put together. The track called The Epilogue was good, even if it's just a rendition of the main Zelda theme, and I never got to hear that because I didn't get the good ending. I'm gonna talk about that a bit later on. And Gerudo Town Day was decent at least. Outside of those two tracks, there is not a single track I truly enjoyed listening to in this 134 track long soundtrack. One real bad instance of music has been when I was inside the Camel Divine Beast. It's called Juan Naboris. The composer of this track just slammed down on the piano and said, "Yeah, that sounds good, ship it out."
Wrap it up. That's it.
I'm trying to solve this really confusing puzzle, hearing this awful sound effect every single time I use my Sheikah Slate to move the Divine Beast. All the while constantly hearing slams on the piano for, I don't know, maybe half an hour. I remember audibly saying to myself, please make it stop. It literally gave me a headache. I've never gotten a headache while playing a video game before. I can't stress this enough. I was in physical and mental pain while going through that Divine Beast. Now, I'd love to say, oh, I'm exaggerating or I'm just being dramatic. But no, this was my genuine experience with the game. Now, one thing that I could do is turn off the music. You can't. Outside of subtitles and language, there are no audio options in this game. We're in 2017 and the game does not have any audio options. Anyways, for a series that has two of the most iconic video game tracks ever, I really expected more from the soundtrack, but I was utterly disappointed. I want to talk about the finale of this game. The story overall is nothing to write home about. The premise isn't that unique. It, while obviously I'm oversimplifying, comes down to defeat the big bad dude. No real plot twists, no interesting revelations, no moment that kickstarts a series of events that takes the story in a different direction or a new phase. It's not a bad story, it's just not particularly interesting. Anyway, so you get to the finale of it, and this final section is actually not entirely horrible. It's not amazing because I'm still playing Breath of the Wild, but it has that decent finale vibe to it. You know, you're in this castle area, you go along this path, you go through the Guardians, defeat a couple Lionels in these closed rooms, which is actually decently difficult. You go through the outdoors path, go into the indoors path, you defeat some enemies in there, explore some rooms, and you make your way to the center of the castle. This area seemed slightly more interesting to explore than the rest of the game, but at that point there was no reason for me to because I was satisfied with the equipment I had on me, I was stacked up on food, you know, I felt like I was ready to take on the final boss. So I didn't go out of my way to explore these rooms to find better gear. It had sort of like a 3D map, it had these outdoor sections, indoor sections, these castle rooms that you could explore, so it still felt like it would have been fun to explore. So I was like, okay, I'll come back after the final battle. All the slimy stuff are probably gonna be gone, most if not all enemies should be gone, and if there's only a couple left I should be able to take care of them easily. And it would have been really immersion breaking to stroll into these rooms just casually exploring while I'm marching and making my way towards the final boss. So okay, I'll come back after the battle without any of these added factors. Well, you can't. Well, you can come back to the game, but you can just choose a save file from before you've defeated the final boss. There was literally one place in the entire game that I genuinely wanted to explore, and I can't. All of that aside, I finally make my way to the final boss. Finally, I'm gonna fight what all this time and effort led up to. It was really disappointing. Most of the fight goes like, he just throws stuff at you and you dodge him, you run, you do a couple of flurry rushes, and he's dead. He doesn't hit you super hard or anything like that. Nothing that forced me to utilize all of my abilities or tested my skills. It was just such a disappointing fight. But guess what? There's a phase 2. This has got to be the easiest phase 2 final boss ever. It's this huge beast and all it does is fire a laser from its mouth. He doesn't even move its head side to side or anything like that. All you have to do is shoot like 4 spots on him and then you jump and shoot his eye and he's dead. That's it. It was so underwhelming. After you defeat the final boss, nothing happens. They just leave. Link and Zelda just walk and that's it. Roll credits. Now there's one more cutscene you can have show up after that. I didn't get that cutscene because the way you get that is you get 13 photos on your Sheikah Slate. These are photos taken from various locations in the open world, and you have to find and go to those exact locations without any help, which is, like most things in this game, absolutely ridiculous, and then return to the NPC that gave you the photo quest. I looked up all of these locations and got to the final one. Apparently the final one is in the castle section. So you're traveling across the world, defeating the divine beast, acquiring the master sword. You feel like you're finally ready for the final chapter, so you start the section, marching and making your way to the final boss. And the game asks you to take your little tablet out, look at a photo, and stupidly look around trying to find the exact spot the photo was taken at. Go back to the NPC just for them to say, well done Link, off you go now. Imagine you're playing Sonic Unleashed and you're in the final chapter. You take Tails' ride, you go through the hell that is Eggman Land, Eggman ambushes you, and now you're in this epic boss fight falling down to the center of the earth where you're gonna fight the final boss. Imagine in the middle of that you pause the game and go, you know what, I'm gonna do some hot dog missions now, and you exit the stage and go do that. It would have killed that whole vibe, all that excitement and all that build up, so I didn't bother doing it. If you do it, you get an extra cutscene at the end like I said. In this cutscene, well, nothing happens. Zelda says, oh, we need to rebuild Hyrule, and then she smiles at you. That's it! That's the game! It was just such an underwhelming finale to an already underwhelming game. You know, not every single second I had with this game was negative. I enjoyed riding my horse through a beautiful grassy landscape. I enjoyed extinguishing this fiery rock monster with my ice rod, climbing onto its back, switching to my hammer and hitting the rock there, killing it, and watching it explode into a bunch of precious metals with a triumphant jingle playing when I defeated it. And I enjoyed facing the Guardians in the tests of strength where I took them on one-on-one. The game does have some positives. It has gorgeous landscapes and scenery, even though most pretty scenery is in the grassy areas only, which is very common across video games, but still. There is a very large amount of content, even though getting to said content is agonizing. If you're willing to put up with the torture that it brings with it, there is a massive amount of things to do in this game. And finally, and most importantly, the amount of world detail and interactability is insane. This video by IGN does a great job of showcasing a lot of it. It blows my mind every time I watch it. This stuff is phenomenal. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in a video game. The game doesn't bother to teach or show you any of it, of course, but none of that matters if the game is just so unfun to play. This game doesn't want you to have fun while playing it. It tries its damned hardest to bore you and annoy you and to make you stop playing it.
I'm going to be so boring, Michael will get so fed up, he'll go back to bed.
It's like they focused so much on making the world as big as possible and chucking in as many mechanics as they could that they forgot to stop and think, is the game fun? Is what we're doing actually making the game fun? Breath of the Wild is like a steaming hot, delicious slice of pizza covered in a mountain of poop. There is a template, there are ideas and concepts in there that could be utilized to make a truly remarkable game. But it's buried so deep inside a game that doesn't want me to have fun playing it. There were a grand total of 0 moments in this game where I was like, that was really fun, I really enjoyed that. However, there were dozens of moments in this game where I said to myself, why am I still playing this game? In summary, absolute and utter disappointment. It has some phenomenal things going for it, but virtually none of it was able to manifest itself during my time with the game. My score for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, probably very shockingly to a lot of you, is a 2 out of 10 for awful. I'm sorry, it's just what I personally think. I hope I've been able to express myself well enough, and that's gonna wrap it up for this review. Now, Tears of the Kingdom. What do I think? As of recording this video, there is less than 10 days left for the release of the game. From what I've seen, the mechanics actually look amazing. You know, they just have to fix a lot of these frustrating issues that just add up, and they need to fix the traversal. If they can somehow manage to address all of my issues, there's no reason why it can't be a truly great game. Fingers crossed, but I'm not holding my breath. Now that you heard my opinion, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you thought down below. This took a really long time to make, so I hope you enjoyed the video. See you around.